quickly as possible. Otherwise, people might start getting ideas. I think that's a great point. People might start getting ideas. They may say that we don't want to go back because the life before that was not good either. People were still like dying of diseases of despair, didn't have access to healthcare. Like, life wasn't good. And this system was a big reason why the coronavirus was able to happen so easily and really wrap through our country in the way it was. And there was a whole group of people, very powerful group of people, and a very crazy, death cultish group of people calling for that system to come back unabated and uninterrupted. This is let's take a look at some of these right-wing groups here. As a wave of planned anti-lockdown demonstrations that have broken out across the country to protest against the efforts of state governments to combat the coronavirus pandemic with business closures and stay-at-home orders have included far-right groups as well as more mainstream Republicans, while protesters in Michigan, Ohio, and Kentucky and other states claim to speak for ordinary citizens. Many are also supported by street-fighting right-wing groups like the Proud Boys, conservative armed militia groups, religious fundamentalists, and anti-vaccination groups, as well as other elements of the radical right. On Wednesday in Lansing, Michigan, it put a protest put together by two Republican-connected not-for-profits was explicitly devised to cause gridlock in the city and for a time-blocked entrance to the local hospital. Is crazy. This is organized. This Lansing, Michigan protest was explicitly devised to block for a time and blocked entrance to hospitals. That's just that is unforgivable. If you want to go out in the streets, that's one thing. But if you actually want to come out and legitimately put people's lives in danger that you don't even know, that is just unforgivable stuff. Like, those people should be just taken out of the way. And I don't mean like physically hurt, but they should just be picked up, put in the side, and just blocking in the hospital during a pandemic should just not be okay. But this protest, it was organized by the Michigan Conservative Coalition, which Michigan state corporate filings show has also operated under the name Michigan Trump Republicans. It was heavily promoted by the Michigan Freedom Fund, a group linked to Trump cabinet member Betsy DeVos. But the protest it also attracted a far-right protest groups that have been present at pro-Trump and gun rights rallies in Michigan throughout the Trump presidency. Placards identified the Michigan Proud Boys as participants in the vehicle. Near the State House, local radio interviewed a man who identified himself as Phil Odinson. In fact, the man is named Phil Robinson, the prime mover in a group called the Michigan Liberty Militia, whose Facebook page features pictures of firearms, warning of civil war, celebrations of Norse paganism, and memes ultimately sourced from white nationalist groups. So it shows you there's just a lot of money being put behind this here. And the Washington Post has a story about this just as we're talking. A trio of far-right pro-gun provocateurs is behind some of the largest Facebook groups calling for anti-quarantine protests across the country, offering the latest illustration that some seemingly organic demonstrations are being engineered by a network of conservative activists. And all these groups, these kind of amorphous, hard-to-track-down corporate groups with weird names like Michiganders for rights or whatever. Like, we like good things incorporated. Like, those groups, they're most likely being funded by other groups that are not choosing to disclose their funding. And they could be, and I would go out on a limb to say, are groups that are representing massive, powerful business institutions. I'm gonna say that so far. Speaking of massive, powerful business institutions, guys, there is a bailout panel. For the past week, we've watched this absurd spectacle take place about this whole bailout panel, really, as David Day in here explains on the Prospect, where this absurd spectacle happening where money is flying out the door of the Federal Reserve bailout programs, and the only person in a position to conduct oversight has nothing more than a Twitter feed. Bharat Ramurthy, Ramamurti, a former Elizabeth Warren campaign staffer who David Dayen interviewed last week, was until yesterday the only member of the Congressional Oversight Commission, a 5-member panel outside of the executive branch, so Trump can't fire anyone associated with it, was charged with monitoring this bailout. Ramamurti and his tweets have been unusually effective, getting the Fed to agree to publish all transactions that use public funds and some detailed information, but it's clear that he needs some help. A staff, office, and maybe 4 of the members on the panel to cover what could reach $4.5 trillion in corporate lending. He's in charge of this one guy, Bharat Ramamurti, a former Elizabeth Warren staffer, is overseeing one of the largest bailout projects, not the largest bailout project we have ever done as a country. We got 3 new guys yesterday. Republican leaders in the House and Senate chose nondescript Congressman French Hill of Arkansas, Chamber of Commerce mole Pat Toomey, and the pick to watch was the House Democratic seat. There was no obligation to choose a sitting member of Congress, but Katie Porter was actively seeking the job. For those of you who don't know, Katie Porter, she is a Elizabeth Warren supporting progressive, very strong on banks and economic injustices. I think she would have been great for the job and overseeing that. She's dealt with these high financial crimes in her pre-political career. She was elected in 2018. I think she would have been absolutely great for this job. And she didn't even support that idiot Bernie Sanders who nobody likes. So she would have been maybe suitable to Nancy Pelosi. But really, she was the only member actively seeking the job with deep experience in financial services and demonstrated aptitude with oversight. There really was no better person, I think, for the job, at least sitting in Congress right now. Who did Nancy Pelosi choose? Her friend, freshman Congresswoman Donna Shalala of Florida. Yeah, baby, let's go. Donna's got it. She's got it covered, guys. She's got it covered. Yeah, and this could be described as a pretty crazy selection. Shalala, according to sources, had no interest in the job. She has no expertise in the financial industry or the Fed. The 2 committees that would prepare you for this would arguably be Financial Services Committee and Oversight. Katie Porter sits on both of those committees. Shalala sits on the Education and Labor and Rules committees. She's on the Early Childhood Education Subcommittee, so if that ever comes up in discussing the Fed's corporate bond or high-yield ETF purchases, we are in good shape here. It's looking good. We got this, guys. She'll help bail out she'll help organize the bailout money to big preschool. She'll get us covered. Yeah, Shalala was the Health and Human Services Secretary, I believe, under Clinton. In a public statement, Pelosi highlights that, saying Shalala will ensure that the historic coronavirus relief package is being used wisely and efficiently to protect the lives of the American people and will not be exploited by profiteers and price gougers. But the oversight panel has nothing to do with the public health aspect of this pandemic. It's supposed to examine the Federal Reserve lending programs and whether they are assisting the public in economic stabilization and job recovery. They're supposed to keep an eye on that. It's not going to be about funding hospitals. Like, she's just completely misleading a lot of people here with the public statement. And again, another piece of evidence is, if you needed it at all, is that Nancy Pelosi is not on your side here. She is not someone who is committed to seeing real change. She is someone who actively wants to maintain the status quo, even during times of international crisis. Yeah, so it's these are deliberately complex programs that require the oversight of someone with at least a passing familiarity with the financial system and corporate America. The only expertise Shalala has comes from all those many stocks that she owns. And Shalala's recent financial disclosure, most recent one dated in May 2019, she lists share ownership in an array of companies that may be on the front line for a bailout. She holds shares in Boeing, as well as Alaska Airlines, Spirit Aerosystems, which builds pieces of Boeing aircraft. She owns Chevron, ConocoPhillips, Royal Dutch Shell, and Occidental Petroleum at a time of a historic crash in oil prices. She owns the entertainment stock Paramount, Live Nation, AMC Theaters. The latter is almost certainly headed to bankruptcy. She owns Choice Hotels. No one's staying in hotels. She owns TripAdvisor. No one's taking trips. She owns retailers and retail producers such as Ralph Lauren, L Brands, Burlington Stores, Five Below. Retail's obviously in a lot of trouble. She's also got Walmart, so she could be okay there. She owns big banks like J.P. Morgan, Chase, Wells Fargo, Bank of New York Mellon, BBVA Compass, and HSBC. She owns between $301,000 and $615,000 in United Health, where she served on the board from 2001 to 2007 during her time of during part of the time detailed in a 2017 Justice Department complaint accusing the insurer of overbilling Medicare for over $1 billion. That would have reflected very profiteering and price gouging. Pelosi said it was important for Shalala to scrutinize. I mean, maybe she does have experience. I don't know. But pretty much the point is here, to sum this story up, like Nancy Pelosi, again, proving that she does not care one whit about anything, at least trying to appeal progressive. She puts her friend on there who does not know anything about any of these anything about finance at all to put this out there and to deal out these bailout funds. It's just an absolutely crazy, stunning, and blatantly offensive move to anyone paying attention to this who wants to see some sort of justice. Like, this is the taxpayers' money that Nancy Pelosi is handing oversight over to of one of her friends who has a lot of money in stocks, like and stocks that this is the it's blowing my mind. I don't have the words to say how insanely awful this is, because it's just like you should be able to see it for yourself. You really should at this point be able to see it for yourself. Like, she owns Aerios, half the airline industry. They come to her for a bailout. Like, is she going to say no? Like, she's going to be bailing herself out with this. She's going to be bailing herself out with this. Like, these stocks would be going up so much the moment she's like, yeah, I think we should do a bailout for them. Like, this is, like, Richard Burr. Like, how is this any different from what Richard Burr did? Like, how is this any different? I just don't get it. It is absolutely unbelievable. Wow. Anyway, we only have one more story to talk about. On Wednesday, The Intercept reported that a roster of private equity vultures, C-suite ghouls, and Ice Cube's business partner were, in fact, funding the long-shot Democratic primary bid of former CNBC anchor Michelle Caruso Cabrera. We just did a YouTube video about that. Whether she's a shot, James Stanley breaks it down. Caruso Cabrera has no policy positions whatsoever on her website, and for good reason. She was a Tea Partier as recently as a decade ago, where she wrote a book called You Know I'm Right, More Prosperity, Less Government. In the book, Caruso Cabrera calls Medicaid and Social Security the country's biggest pyramid scheme, and wrote that she would end both programs in favor of a privatized voucher system. Medicare, Caruso Cabrera wrote, is another pay-as-you-go Ponzi scheme that should be replaced with a health savings account to give seniors $1,000 or $2,000 a year to start. Social Security, she notes, should be replaced with a private account system in which Americans are incentivized to invest in the stock market. So just the ghoulish, most disgusting right-wing stuff. Caruso Cabrera devotes an entire chapter to the many policy successes of the Reagan administration and writes that she favors tax cuts and deregulation, including eliminating entire federal agencies, such as the Labor Department. What could go wrong? This is almost certainly a waste of money, this infusion of policy. Ocasio-Cortez raised over $5 million in 2019, an off year, and barring any unforeseen circumstances, shouldn't have any problem winning her primary and re-election. If Wall Street really wants to get rid of her, they'd be much better served by lining the pockets of the right New York Democratic legislatures, who will likely control redistricting after this year. But as futile as this exercise seems, it really illustrates how desperate capital is to crush dissent. This is a piece here from Paul Blest in the Discourse. It's not that capitalists fear an imminent takeover by the left, or have had any reason to do so. The 2020 primary was really the best opportunity the left had to get on the ticket since Henry Wallace got kicked off the 1944 Democratic ticket, and that project failed, as we know. The Democratic congressional leadership, with little protest from the biggest figures on the American left, who admittedly had limited power to stop it, helped Mitch McConnell ram through a corporate bailout that might turn out to be worse than TARP. The simmering class and generational anger that fueled the movement behind Bernie Sanders' 2016 and 2020 runs is still there, but it has lost a certain electoral figurehead who projects a vision for a better country and has